Okay, we're back, and we're working on our navigation bar. And we already got the first part set up. Let's take a look at the page that we were working on. And here's the page so far. We have pretty much a nav bar working. What we haven't really styled is we haven't styled the outer container. There's some more little techniques we're going to apply now. And then we'll start looking at some of the other CSS3 effects we can do to really style it even more. So that's what we're going to do now. The first thing I want to point out is, you see those gaps in between the buttons? Those gaps in between the buttons are a side effect of the display inline block. And so you might be wondering, how do I get rid of that? Well, you kind of have two options for how to get rid of it. Now, if you want to just have buttons by themselves, just floating there, then you might be out of luck. You might want to just change the background color so that it doesn't show. The easiest way to deal with this is let's pick the same background color and apply it to the nav, and then just make it tall enough to match inside of our unordered list. So again, we talked about styling the nav. It's for dressing. Now's the time to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the left here, but I'm going to refer to my nav information here. So I'm going to grab the background color that I set on nav A, and I'm going to apply it to my nav here. Save my changes. Now, an interesting thing happens when I set it on the nav. You will note it puts a little strip right across. And you might be asking yourself, why is it not taller? Aren't those buttons inside? Well, here's the deal. The height of the nav is going to match the height of the text. But the padding of the list, or our hyperlinks, the padding goes beyond the width of the nav. So we probably should match the padding on our nav. And let's just see if that actually does anything or not. And it was 5 EM. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Let me change that. 0 for top and, no, we want to do it top and bottom. Sorry, 5 EM, 0.5 EM for top and bottom. And we're not going to add any padding on the left or right. I'm going to save our changes. Let's go back here, hit refresh. There we go. And if you look here, it pretty much lines up. The only difference is if you hover, you can see there's a little border at the bottom. So it didn't quite match it, but it was pretty close. So the other thing you may want to do is make it more of a padding. What if you make it 1 EM, hit refresh, and now it's taller and our buttons fit inside. So that's up to you if you want to do it that way. You can play around with these settings to do it. But that's one of the reasons why I told you the nav is for dressing, but now you can't see the gaps in between it. You can't tell they're there. Now, if you really absolutely have to get rid of those gaps for another reason, you can play with negative margins. I believe that would work. But before we do that and get too technical, let's just go ahead and style the rest. Notice, as long as the padding now matches, first of all, I can get rid of that padding line because we already had it there. But if this padding matches or exceeds the padding of our A, then our hyperlinks fit right inside. I'm going to try another little trick here. I'm going to go back to where we were before with the 0.5 EM. And the only thing that right now has padding is our main nav and our hyperlinks. So what if I add a little padding into the list item? And on here, I put a 0.1 EM 0 on my list item. And I hit refresh. And I go back here. And I hover over it. Now take a look here. The padding on my list item actually goes above and below the hyperlink. And now it really fits just nicely inside of there. By the way, on the fly, I just discovered that and tested it out, and it worked great. I hadn't even planned that ahead of time. All right, but guys, do pay attention to padding on everything and adjust it. Notice how we zeroed margins on all of these, okay? We did not touch margins on our list item. Here's the deal. If it's not broken, don't fix it. So since the list item is not broken, I'm just going to ignore margin on my list item. However, if I want to push my list items away, I can try that. The other thing we're going to try is let's add a border on our list item. And let's just see what happens. Now I'm going to make this border, let's just make it yellow just so it really stands out. Interesting. The border on my list item, the list item is not matching my hyperlink. So now it is broken, so we can't fix it. Unless you like that little effect. It's kind of bizarro, but, you know, hey, whatever. All right, so they're adding a border there. Now if I add padding, let's go ahead and match it to the rest, 0.5 EM, save our changes, and let's see what happens now. Aha. Working a little bit better, but you see these gaps? If you look really closely, let's zoom in on here. You look really closely, you can see a little gap at the bottom. So my recommendation is going back to the if it's not broke, don't fix it. Maybe we should have never put a border on there. Maybe we should have just put it on the hyperlink. So let's go ahead and do that. Excuse me, I meant to do it as border. And we'll do yellow again just to see. And a little bit better because the border's around where we have our padding, but we need a little bit of gap up above. So now what we can do is we can try a little bit of little greater padding at the top of the A. Actually, we don't need padding, I'm sorry. Now we're going to go ahead and add a little margin. So I'm going to add a little margin top to the A. Add 1 pixel. Hit refresh. Does it change anything? Not seeing it. Let's add 3 pixels. See if that's adding anything. Now, part of the problem is it's those margins. What would happen if we add the margin to our list item? Let's see if that helps anything. Like I said, some of this is experimentation. There we go. Okay, back to where we were. I just put the margin top on the wrong item. Let's do it as 1 pixel. And now you can see it's seeming to work. Our border, we might want to add a little bit of margin on the left. In which case, guys, that should probably go under our UL. So watch this. If I do margin 0, 0, 0, and then I do like a 1 px, that'll be top, right, bottom, left. Save changes. Hit refresh. Put a little gap there. I think we need at least 1 more pixel on there. Save our changes. Hit refresh. There we go. Pretty good there. Okay. It's always a good idea to zoom in really tight to see how that works. All right, at this point now, we've got our Navbar. We got our hover effect. There's 2 more things I want to show you in this particular tutorial. Number 1, what if you want these buttons centered in the middle? To center them in the middle, it's very simple. We're going to go to the outermost container, which is our main nav, and we're going to do text align. This is how we set up, and paragraphs of text. If we center it, watch what happens. The whole thing gets centered in the middle. Okay, so that's how you can center it in the middle. You just do text align center. If you don't like that effect, don't add it. Okay, so that's 1. The other thing I want to cover is I want to show you what we talked about before in the last tutorial. Remember where we had the class of where was it? Oh, this isn't on here. Let me go ahead and see if I can change this. A class of current on our hyperlink. I'm not sure what's going on here. I'm going to say no. And I'm going to open that up again. Open up Adventure. Yeah, on Adventure it has a class of current. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to target our hyperlink with a class of current now. So an easy, quick, and dirty way to do this, guys, and this is just an option you may have. Remember where we had the hover effect on here? If I just copy this, and I put a comma here, and I space it, that means we apply these 2 styles to both the hover effect and the current link. Save my changes, hit refresh, and now remember the home page started as current. and then Nightlife, High Adventure, Mount Doom. So if I click through here, notice Nightlife has changed. We have a problem, Houston, with our nav. Let's look at High Adventure, Mount Doom, Barad-dûr. Okay, everything but home is working. We have a major problem. What's going on? Let's go back to Adventure. I know what it is, guys. See, it's Mordor Travel Brochure. What are we missing in our nav? We are missing what we had on the home page. Let's get that open. Index was the home page, and as you may recall, on the home page, it had a class of main nav. And then the UL had a class of navbar. So I actually have to go in and add those to my other pages. So go to Adventure, add it, save. Now I'm just going to go ahead and proceed to reopen those. Okay, now look at, I've added the main nav to all of my pages, and you can see now they're all centered. Not only that, but when I click on, for example, Nightlife, it says Nightlife, and my button here is different. There's another thing that's really kind of bugging me, and it's the underline. Okay, I don't like the underline on my text. On hyperlinks, it's okay, but on a nav, that's really annoying. So let's remove that in our navigation.css. So we're going to remove it. It's on the hyperlink that creates it. So I'd like you, if you haven't done this, go ahead. It's actually text decoration none. I think it's under the hyperlink. Yeah. Text decoration none removes the underlines. That looks a little bit better. You might also want to make everything bold, and you can do it in the hyperlink. But you could also do it in the list item, and you could do it in the UL or the main nav. So it just doesn't really matter, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it here. Font, weight, bold. Add any other typography styles you want, and now they're all bold. You might want to change the font, etc. So there we have it. The last thing I recommend you do before we do anything else is looking at the home page. I just want to remind you, we also had a class of navbar, and for whatever reason, I only started on the home page after I made all my other pages. So I have to go through all of them again and add them back in. So I'll proceed to do that. You don't need to see me doing it. All right, folks, there's one last thing I want to cover, and that is on your nav A hover, A current. That effect works, but you might want to make the current one a little different. So my recommendation is that maybe you change the background color on current. So I'm actually going to delete that. And I am going to use this color. But in my case, I want to make the background color a little different. And I want to make it darker. So we used E's. Let's try B. We'll try 3 B's to begin with. Save our changes. And now you can see hover is a little lighter. And you see how the home, nightlife, etc. So you might want to do that, make it a little more subtle. And you can try, for example, all 9s. Some type of gray. And now it's even darker. So it allows you to see the current page still is indicated, but it's different from the hover. So we still know what page we're currently on. It's not a bad idea. And so at this point, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to go through and feel free to change your colors, play around with the margins, either remove or add the text align. And then the next tutorial we do, I'm going to go over some CSS3 styles, like using filters and gradients and box shadows and other things like that.